The Venus of Willendorf is a palm-sized figure of a woman carved out of limestone, found in Austria and dating back to the Paleolithic era in 24,000 BCE. She is an extremely early example of a gender-biased piece of art. She's faceless, although the immediate telltale features that reveal to her audience her gender expression are the exaggerated physical features of the female body. Her enlarged breasts, rounded hips, and buttocks, and her convex belly give it away. An interesting detail to note about her feminine figure is that it immediately relates to her purpose. Whether she is modeled after the contemporary woman of the time or used in some way as a tool, her bodily figure serves as a reminder of the role that women play in society. She's valued by and even reduced to her ability to carry out a pregnancy, give birth, feed her offspring, and serve as a sexual instrument. It is supposed that she may have served a purpose in childbirth as a spiritual conduit for successful birth. She may have even been carried around for the purpose of successful conceiving. This piece does not honor the idea that a woman might play the role of mother and contribute other things to her society, or play a role beyond motherhood. She is one example in Western art that sets a precedent for the other parts of the Western world. Let's travel to ancient Greece and dive a little deeper. The classical period of ancient Greece was a period of massive discovery. It pushed the boundaries of previously accepted norms and introduced new methods of translating storytelling into art. Amongst the newfound artistic interests were the changing views surrounding nudity and its refreshed association with athleticism, accomplishment, dauntlessness, and above all, masculine ability. Male nudity would not have been a new artistic subject to the Greeks by the classical period, and can be found in pieces dating back to the geometric period, or roughly 900 BCE. In the classical period, nudity was not practiced in a popularized way, but to an extent was normalized when involved in sporting events such as wrestling or an exercise. There was interest in documenting nudity more accurately to true anatomy at this time, celebrating the body and its form. And which demographic did popularly participate in sports events whose nudity would be recognized and celebrated in a heroic, athletic, and attractive light? That's right, men. So this would contrast with the beliefs about nudity when it came to women in the classical period. Not to mention, male nude imagery or choros figures would be seen more commonly than female figures due to the difference in reactions toward them. It would be expected and ideal that on a daily basis, women should be clothed or to an extent modest. In fact, one of the most renowned pieces of ancient Greek sculptures made in the 4th century BCE, Aphrodite of Knidos, is an exemplary piece of modest messaging despite its obvious nudity. The Aphrodite of Knidos was a marble sculpture by the artist Praxiteles, made in the 4th century BCE. It depicts Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty herself, attempting to cover up her body, grasping shyly onto a bathcloth and using one hand to block sight of her pubic area. Her shoulders and left knee lean slightly inward, creating contrapposto, but also suggesting that she's bashful or even embarrassed by her nude body being in view. However, her breasts are completely bare. This would seem likely to be very intentional, as the viewer is prevented from viewing her below the belt sexual organs and hence more likely to be drawn upward to her bare chest, being completely exposed. Aphrodite of Knidos would be a trendsetter, creating an idealized image of the perfect woman, wanting to be modest but also being suggestive in nature. Women are expected to be both. Another less obvious example of gender ideation in classical Greek art is Nike adjusting her sandal, a sculpture found in Athens, Greece at the Temple of Athena. On the south wall of the parapet at the Acropolis Temple of Athena, a very ornate relief sculpture of Nike, the goddess of victory, can be found. She's doing just that, adjusting her shoe. Perhaps she's kneeling to remove her shoes before entering a sacred room. She does so in such a manner that her body is positioned to showcase the frontal portion of her torso, as her arm reaches from behind part of her leg to get to her sandal. It is very interesting the way that her body contorts so that the viewer runs their eyes over the meticulously carved drapery that falls clinging tightly to her body, especially to show the contours of her breasts in detail. Look familiar? One might argue that the drapery against her body is only so ornate because the classical period is more conscious regarding realism, anatomy, and weight. However, it is clearly deliberate that the positioning of Nike is manipulated to expose her frontal area, clearly as to not hide her breasts. As realistically, it would have been a more natural pose if she leaned over her legs to look down at her shoe. Also, the breasts are historically and widely used as a symbol of sexuality, fertility, and maternity, which would contribute to the divine and spiritual connotations as the sculpture is found on a temple wall. Once again, a woman serves as a visual representation of the archetypal mother.